More than 200 years ago, humans came to know a drug named as digoxin. We are going to learn all about digoxin today. This is the direct effect which is actually useful in the heart failure. The resting heart rate should be less than 80 beats per minute, and that the vagotonic effect of the digoxin is easily overcome by the exercise. While the digoxin has no mortality benefit, acute digoxin toxicity causes hyperkalemia. Hypokalemia results in digoxin toxicity. Its response is assessed by the ventricular rate. Its name is because its similarity to the Salvador Dali's mustache. The loading dose is recommended in atrial fibrillation only. We cannot give the loading dose in a heart failure. It was 1775. Dr. William Withering, who was physician and botanist, was traveling from his home in Birmingham to Stanford Infirmary Hospital. While on his way, he was requested to see an edematous lady. After examination, Dr. William concluded that the treatment of this disease is not available and her survival is unlikely. But few months later, Dr. William came to know that the same edematous lady improved after taking some herbal tea. This intrigued Dr. William to search for a useful substance, and he was successful in finding that the ingredient of foxglove plant is actually useful. Later he published his finding, and this was start of an era of digoxin. Dr. William had no idea about exact mechanism of action, but now we know that digoxin has both direct and indirect effect. Direct effect means that digoxin is directly acting on myocardium. But first we need to know what is actually happening in the myocardium in normal circumstances. This is the myocardium cell or the myocyte. It has different channels for the communication between inside the cell and the outside surrounding environment. Two of the channels are the prominent here. One is sodium potassium ATPase, while the other is sodium calcium exchanger. Sodium potassium ATPase sends the potassium inside the cell and moves the sodium from inside to outside of the cell. As the sodium is moving out, so there is relative deficiency of the sodium. This deficiency of the sodium activates another channel called the sodium calcium exchanger. Now the sodium is moving from outside to the inside of cell. This inward movement of the sodium is coupled with the outflow of the calcium. This is going on and on until we give digoxin to the patient. Digoxin blocks the sodium potassium ATPase. Sodium is not going out. There is no deficiency of sodium inside the cell. There is no activation of sodium calcium exchanger. So the digoxin indirectly blocks this channel which sends the calcium outside the cell. Calcium is now entrapped within the cell and is available for the contraction of myocardium. This is the direct effect which is actually useful in the heart failure. While the second is indirect effect. Indirect effect means that it's not directly acting on the myocardium. Rather, digoxin acts on the vagus nerve as well. Vagus nerve innervates the SA node and AV node. The function of SA node is to generate electrical activity, while the function of AV node is the conduction from atria to ventricle. When the digoxin is given, it has vagotonic effect. It stimulates the vagus nerve. So when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it reduces the production of electrical activity in SA node. So it reduces the heart rate and it delays the conduction of this electrical activity from atria to ventricle as well. This is the effect which is responsible for its use in atrial fibrillation. Digoxin has two main indications. One is atrial fibrillation, second is heart failure. Let us discuss the use of digoxin in atrial fibrillation first. When we came across a patient with atrial fibrillation, we are commonly treating these patients with the beta blockers and calcium channel blockers, or the rate limiting calcium channel blockers like the verapamil and diltiazem. Now the question is when to use digoxin. Actually these are the first line agents, beta blockers and calcium channel blockers, while digoxin is not the first line agent. Most of the time in atrial fibrillation, the rate control is required, and we have the goals of heart rate to achieve in these conditions. The resting heart rate should be less than 80 beats per minute, and while in the light exercise, the heart rate should not exceed above 100 beats per minute. Resting heart rate up to the 110 is acceptable, but there is a condition: left ventricular function should be normal and the patient must be asymptomatic. If this goal is not achieved with the first line agents, or the first line agents are contraindicated, our patient is not tolerating these agents, then digoxin may be added. So why digoxin is not a first line agent? One of the reasons is that the vagotonic effect of the digoxin is easily overcome by the exercise. Patient heart rates may increase above the acceptable level with the light exercise, while the digoxin while the beta blockers or the calcium channel blocker effect is not overcome by the exercise, and the digoxin has narrow therapeutic index. It has a drug interactions with the many of the drugs. It's not tolerated well as compared to beta blockers or calcium channel blockers. So when we see a patient with the heart failure, then initially we start the beta blockers or the RAS inhibitors like angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers. So when to use digoxin in heart failure? If the first line agents are contraindicated, patient is not tolerating them, or there is no sufficient response, then digoxin may be added. There is the extra benefit of the beta blockers or the RAS inhibitor. They have mortality benefit, while the digoxin has no mortality benefit. It only reduces the symptoms, it reduces the swelling, and it reduces the frequent hospitalization. It is estimated that it reduces the frequent hospitalization by average 25%. If a patient has both atrial fibrillation and heart failure together, then digoxin may be used as a first line agent. Digoxin and potassium has a strange relation. Acute digoxin toxicity causes hyperkalemia, while the hypokalemia results in digoxin toxicity. Isn't it strange? Let us find out how it happens. Sodium potassium ATPase is present on all the cells of body. When we give digoxin in therapeutic dose, it only acts on the myocardial sodium potassium pump, while the increased dose of the digoxin, in toxic dose, it blocks not only the myocardial sodium potassium pump, but sodium potassium pump of other cells of the body are also blocked. So there is no uptake of the potassium by the cell, and it results in hyperkalemia. Well, how hypokalemia causes digoxin toxicity? Potassium and digoxin tends to bind on the same site of the sodium potassium pump. So if there is hypokalemia, digoxin gets the more chance to bind the receptor and causes the toxicity. So simple. Side effects of digoxin. The most common side effect is nausea and vomiting. When we see a patient taking digoxin and has developed vomiting, and we fail to find any other cause of the vomiting, then digoxin toxicity may be considered. There is disturbance of color vision or the xanthopsia. There may be the gynecomastia and enlargement of the female breast. It happens because the digoxin has a structural similarity with estrogen. And then the CNS effects of digoxin, it includes restlessness, confusion, acute psychosis, and agitation. Digoxin has a narrow therapeutic index. The range of therapeutic index is mentioned in different books in a different range. Here I am mentioning 0.5 to 0.9. What does mean the narrow therapeutic index? It means we give a small little dose above the therapeutic dose, it may result in the toxicity. If we give if the dose is slightly less than therapeutic dose, then it has no benefit. So it has the narrow therapeutic index, and we have to maintain that. Digoxin is one of the drugs which levels need to be monitored. So when and why to check digoxin levels? Its sole purpose is to prevent toxicity. We cannot see the response of digoxin by the blood levels, and its response is assessed by the ventricular rate. It takes 7 days to achieve the steady state, so the blood level should be checked after at least the patient is taken digoxin for 7 days and 6 hours after taking the oral dose. Salvador Dali was a famous Spanish artist of the 20th century. Apart from his art, he was also famous for his unique mustache. He also wrote a book with the title name of Dali's Mustache. You might be thinking, Why am I talking about it? Well, I have the reason for it, and we'll find it out in a minute. If the patient is taking digoxin and we have the ECG of that patient, we can see the effect of digoxin on that ECG. There are the two main features. One is the downward sloping of ST segment. It has a different names, and one of its names is Salvador Dali's sagging. Its name is because its similarity to the Salvador Dali's mustache. Here in the picture you can see the Salvador Dali's mustache and the ST segment sagging. It has while it has the other names. Other names are the reverse tick sign, spooning, or the sagging. And the second feature is the QT interval is short, which is usually less than 380 milliseconds. One large box is 200 milliseconds, while two large boxes are 400 milliseconds, and the QT interval here usually is less than 380 milliseconds. So we can assume by just looking at the ECG that the QT interval is short, and there is a downward sagging or the Salvador Dali sagging. Look at this ECG. Here the arrows indicate the downward sagging of the ST segment or the Salvador Dali sagging. And QT interval, if we calculate here, is short. It is less than 380 milliseconds. Let us talk about digoxin toxicity. We'll talk about just briefly about it because it's a whole separate topic which will be discussed later. It has a cardiac feature and the extracardiac feature. The extracardiac feature are the nausea, vomiting, anorexia, diarrhea, and xanthopsia, while the cardiac features are the bradycardia. Here the ECG of the bradycardia, it is the ECG of the sinus bradycardia is shown here, and next is the ventricular bigeminy. In ventricular bigeminy, each normal QRS complex is followed by premature ventricular contraction, while in the ventricular trigeminy, after each two normal QRS complexes, there is the premature ventricular contractions. Premature ventricular contraction. And then is the ventricular tachycardia. It is the monomorphic ventricular tachycardia. Here in the ECG is shown by it might be the polymorphic ventricular tachycardia as well. Next is atrial tachycardia with a variable block, and usually the multiple features are the present. I mean, there is a bradycardia, and then there might be the premature ventricular contractions. It might be the bigeminy or the trigeminy, or there are the multiple premature ventricular contractions, and they have no specific pattern. Let us talk about the dose of the digoxin. There are the two conditions. One is atrial fibrillation and other is heart failure. The maintenance dose is same in both of these conditions, which is the 0.125 to the 0.25 mg once a day, while the loading dose is recommended in atrial fibrillation only. We cannot give the loading dose in a heart failure. The dose in this case is a 0.25 to the 0.5 mg IV. We can repeat the dose after 6 to 8 hours until the desired response is achieved. The maximum dose we can give in a 24 hours is a 1.5 mg. 85% of the digoxin excretes through the kidney in an unchanged form. So the dose adjustment is necessary if there is a renal impairment, and it is easy in this case. If the creatinine clearance is less than 30, then we should give half of the lower maintenance dose, 0.125 mg, after every 48 hours, and in the normal condition we are giving 0.125 mg in a 24 hours. If the patient has the hepatic impairment, no dose adjustment is necessary. If we give the digoxin with the verapamil, nifedipine, amiodarone, or the quinidine, then there is an increased digoxin level. If the digoxin with the beta blockers or the verapamil is given, then it increases the chance of AV block. If there is we give the digoxin with the furosemide, then there is an increased chance of digoxin toxicity. It's because the furosemide causes the hypokalemia, and the hypokalemia causes digoxin toxicity. I hope you learned something new today about digoxin. If you have a question or any information to add about digoxin, kindly comment below.